The Zeppelins were a flying machine that was used in the military of many countries during World War I, where they would be used for things like reconnaissance, bombing raids, raids in general, and propaganda. The Zeppelins would prove to be very good at striking fear into people, even though the number of people killed by them was rather low, all things considered, and comparatively, planes that would come later in the war would do way more damage. The Zeppelin would only make military appearances during World War I, as they would soon become outmatched by the quicker planes. After Zeppelins were dispatched and disbanded from military use by most countries, they eventually made a comeback for use in advertising through the skies. Eventually, they made their way into entertainment for certain sporting events. Focusing back on World War I, we are going to shift to the use of the creation of the Zeppelin as it is known in World War I. The Zeppelins were used in World War I and were made by a man named Ferdinand von Zeppelin. Ferdinand von Zeppelin was an army officer for Germany, but he had armed First Force roots in the Prussian army since 1858. During his time in the Prussian army, he served in the Franco-Prussian War, the 7 Weeks' War. In addition to this, he served as an observer during his service in the American Civil War for the Union. He finished his service when he finally retired in 1891, and once he retired, he focused his attention on airships. Before he created what we know as the Zeppelins used in World War I, he worked on and made multiple other airships, with none being as successful as the Zeppelin. He worked and worked until he came upon the success of the Zeppelin and introduced it to Germany, who used it during the duration of World War I. After the Germans discovered that the Zeppelin wasn't as useful as they expected, they dismantled their fleet of 117 Zeppelins. Shifting gears, here are some more fun facts about the Zeppelin used in World War I. The Zeppelin was able to travel as fast as 85 miles per hour and could carry 2 tons of bombs, which would be a huge part of the bombing raids on London. They were 190 meters long, causing them to be easy targets for planes when not at high altitudes. Speaking of high altitudes, the Zeppelin could travel as high as 20,000 feet. It would be filled with hydrogen as it was a gas lighter than air, making the Zeppelin float, though it was very flammable, meaning that one good shot from a burning bullet would send the whole thing up in flames. This could also happen even with something like static electricity, which would be the case of the Hindenburg disaster years after the war. Now, focusing on the creation, and background of the Zeppelin itself. Ferdinand von Zeppelin was the creator of the Zeppelin and had military experience. The Zeppelin was created in the year 1900 and had its first official flight on July 2, 1900. This initial flight was from a floating hangar on Lake Constance in Germany, near Friedrichshafen. The German armed forces proceeded to use the Zeppelin's invention for World War I and added 115 in their fleet during the height of the war. To branch off of the first launch of the Zeppelin, we are going to talk about what exactly a floating hangar is. A floating hangar is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, a hangar that was floating on the water's surface. Floating hangars have an open bottom near the water and one opening on the small ends of a large metal tube. These hangars most commonly house Zeppelins and sometimes planes. The safety of the hangar allowed technicians to work on, repair, and build certain pieces if needed. Of course, in this case, the Zeppelin was created elsewhere, and the majority was assembled on land, but once the Zeppelin was ready, it could fly without any complications. The Zeppelins would not be very significant to the outcome of the war. They were proven not to deal much damage, could be taken down in one shot, and were very expensive to make. By the end of the war, 77 of the 115 German Zeppelins were destroyed, with them not making many appearances by the war's end. However, even with all of these drawbacks, they were able to do one thing very well: strike fear into anyone who saw them. During the Zeppelin raids on London, the British referred to the ship as baby killers. It caused the British to drain the lake in St. James Park out of fear that the reflections of it would direct the Zeppelins toward nearby Buckingham Palace. Even Charlie Chaplin, who was a very famous actor of the time, filmed a short where he took down one of the Zeppelins. So, Even though the Zeppelins never scored many physical victories, their mental victories were secured, with them being sewn into the public consciousness.